The dimensions of the one differ from the dimensions of the others. That is all. Some parts consist of energy accumulated into power by the deceleration of axial and acceleration of orbital speed time, while other parts consist of energy dissipated into the opposite effects of motion. Pressure opposition is but one of the effects of motion. All effects of motion are both gravitative and radiative, but one or the other in preponderance. Mass accumulates in focal centers because of a preponderance of positive charge. Accumulation of mass is due to the attractive power of gravitation to increase pressures and thus force great volume into less volume, with focal centers of greater positive charge and greater contractive pressures. Now I'm going to interrupt the reading to read what is on this chart that you see on the screen. Nature's plan of erecting pressure walls during the journey from the universal white light of inertia to its simulation in motion. The axis of the controlling plane of each elemental line has been extended to its opposing focal point and attached to its opposite element. This is indicated by rectangles in order to call attention to their parallel positions. The universal gyroscope assorts all states of motion by their planes of gyration. Like planes seek each other. The four tones of any octave exactly equal the four tones of any other octave in mass energy. To crowd their accumulated forces into smaller volume does not in any way alter their energy constant. And down at the bottom of this page, mathematical relations are constant. The mathematical relations of any wave of energy never change. All dimensions expand and contract in opposite directions of the same ratio. All energy is expressed in waves. All waves are divided into pressure zones. All pressure zones are sustained by pressure walls erected in defined, locked potential positions. Now, that is all that I will read on that chart. Back to the words. The desire to attract is purely a gravitative effect, and the reactive repulsion is a radiative one. One is an accumulating pressure which resists redistribution. The other is a distributing pressure which resists accumulation. There are zones of opposing pressures throughout this universe of motion, which vary in density as the distance increases from the nuclear centers of centrifugal vortexes. In every mass, the attraction of the accumulating pressure and the repulsion of the distributing pressure exert their forces in opposite directions. The dimensions of the electric stream increase in inverse universal ratio to the dimensions of the magnetic stream. An expanded mass rising in the air has a lifting capacity in respect to the mass from which it is rising, and it also has weight or compression capacity in respect to the potential toward which it is falling. In any mass, the lifting capacity in relation to high potential is equal to the compression capacity in relation to low potential. The lifting capacity of a gas rising in the air exactly corresponds to the action of a suction pump. It reduces the potential and pressure of the planet by expanding it. On the contrary, an added weight exactly corresponds to the action of a compression pump in raising the potential and pressure of the planet by contracting it. Consider, for example, the radiation of the sun. The radiation has a lifting power in respect to the sun, the effect of which is to degenerate the sun. On the other hand, it has weight in respect to the planets against which it impacts, the effects of which is to regenerate them. The degeneration of any mass is exactly balanced by the regeneration of another mass. All effects of motion are always in equilibrium, and all are tonally periodic. All periodicities are orderly, and their orderliness of increase and decrease of intensity in their expression always conforms with the octave formula of the locked potentials, and also with the cyclic order of 5 in-breathings and 5 out-breathings, which constitute one super inhalation-exhalation period. Now we have a little chart that is maximum pressure, and it shows the black lines are the generation lines, the dotted lines are the degeneration lines, and the line in the middle of it there, union of both, is regeneration inertial plane. And then degeneration again, the dotted line, and generation, the black line in the lower half of that cone. Generating mass seeks higher pressure zones. Degenerating mass seeks lower pressure zones. 0 is the minimum pressure. Regeneration is affected by degenerative impact in inertia, thus reversing sex. Next chapter, attraction and repulsion. Every particle of matter in the universe is attracted to every other particle of matter in the universe. Everybody attracts every other body with a force that varies directly as the product of their masses and inversely as the square of the distance between them. No more fundamental principles have been written than these 2 Newtonian laws, and no laws have been more universally accepted. Concerning Newton's laws of gravitation, it is stated that they are the broadest and most fundamental which nature makes known to us. If it can be shown that the substance which we call matter has no power to attract, but that it is motion only which attracts, and if it can also be shown that the apparent ability of substance to attract through motion is equally true of its apparent ability to repel through motion, then the first of these laws is inaccurate and should be rewritten. Let us see whether the above law would not be more in keeping with the laws of motion if it were rewritten thus. Every mass has the relative apparent ability to attract and to repel every other mass, its relative ability depending on its relative potential. Let us now consider the varying power of mass to attract other mass according to the distance one is from the other. If the second law is true, 2 equal masses of 2 different substances must attract each other equally from equal distances. If it can be shown that different masses do not attract each other equally, but on the contrary, that there is a great range in the variability of the power of different masses to attract each other, then the law cannot be true. If it can also be shown that the apparent ability of mass to attract and also to repel increases and decreases in orderly ratios as volume, density, pressures, time, temperature, and other dimensions increase and decrease, then dimensions other than mass and distance should be considered in the writing of the law. If it can be shown that the apparent power of attraction is applicable to all forming mass which is heading in the outward journey from the plane of concept to the point of north, and that the apparent power of repulsion is applicable to all dissolving mass which is returning to the inertial plane of concept, then the second of these laws is inaccurate and should be rewritten. Let us see whether this law would not also be more in keeping with the laws of motion if it were rewritten thus.